How are you doing out there? Um, Sorry, I got a little bit of a late start today. Um, Something was weird with my Facebook login, so it still seems a little strange. Oh, good morning. I think that we're connected now. Um, Hi. How's everybody doing out there today? My name is Crispina French, and I am a textile recycling entrepreneur, empowerment coach, screen printer, um, environmentalist, and I'm really all about social and racial justice. So, right now is a really exciting time in the world for me because all of these passions are kind of bubbling to the surface in our culture, and it's so incredible to just be witness to um, kind of the idea that these are discussion topics and these are things that people are really excited about solving and about not only just shining awareness on but actually taking action to change. So welcome to my little 30-day series all about textile recycling, um, and the way that I have been kind of passionately doing what I think is my best to um, diminish the volume of waste headed to the landfill and also inspire others to use their creativity to really nurture themselves. It's a self care practice. So if you're out there and you can hear me, um, let me know where you're tuning in from and how you guys are doing. Um, so today's a simple class in our class, a little discussion, um, all about pens and pen cushions. One of the things that I really love about what I do is that the tools are very simple and really mostly very inexpensive, very accessible. The materials I use are all thrift store or used clothing. I do use other textile waste that I source from large volume textile waste generating companies like clothing manufacturers that I do more like corporate work with. But in general, you can really get this kind of practice started with very little investment, and it doesn't take a lot. There's not a lot of setup time. You can, if you give yourself like 1 hour a week, it really has an impact on your wellness and how you feel for the whole rest of the week. So today we're going to talk about pin cushions, and I have a collection of pin cushions that I'm just going to show you. Um, this one was actually, it's a little owl. I'm just going to take these little pins out so you can see. This was my grandmother's pin cushion. I had obviously, well, maybe not obviously, I had two grandmas. This belonged to my grandmother on my mom's side, Granny Turner, we called her. Her name was Doris. And she was from Iowa. So this is all handmade. It's all like hand embroidered. And somebody took a lot of time to make this really cool owl, two different color eyes. I just love it. It's really like it probably influenced my style over time. I remember this pin cushion from sitting on my grandmother's sewing table, and she kept it in this little sewing box that she had. Um, so it's nice, and it's nice to have these tools, right? Like pin cushions are like this was my grandmother's. My grandmother passed away in 1971, I think. So I was a really little kid. I remember this, and now I have it. So it's just cool to have that kind of history with a tool that you've used for all those years. Okay, so that is kind of the star of the show. Maybe I should have saved her for last, but actually, there's other stars. This is a really cool pin cushion that my girlfriend Julia made and sent to me and my kids a couple of years ago. So Julia is an awesome creative genius. She lives up in Vermont, and she's been a dear friend for many years. And it's just super fun. It's like a donut. And a little secret: I don't eat sugar, but when I did, I never liked donuts. Donuts and American cheese are two things that they're not for me. And I'm a pretty adventurous eater. Um, so there's this little cute pin cushion. This pincushion came to me from a donation. Somebody gave me this in a box of stuff they were getting rid of. And again, it's hand sewn. It's all stitched together with just simple thread. It feels like the inside of this might have like, I don't know, little beans or some kind of like, it's almost like a bean bag. This feels like it's stuffed with like fiberfill, like poly fiberfill stuff. This, I think, has, I don't know if it's wool, like folded up wool fabric, or it's kind of firm. Um, and then this pin cushion was in my production studio for many years. One of the ladies made this pin cushion because they found this incredibly like encrusted beaded sweater with this big patch. This is all like seed beads, and it sat. Their leaves are all beaded, like very intricate. And it sat on the finishing table in my production studio for 10 years anyway, and I still have it. So this was made by one of my sweet employees who saw a need and saw a cool sweater and just made filled the need. Um, this is a traditional little tomato, they're called, and they oftentimes have these little strawberries that are attached with a little thread, and those strawberries are filled with sand, so you can kind of, if your needles get tarnished or any kind of little rough spot on them, if you thread them through the little strawberry with the sand in it, it kind of cleans the surface of the needle. Um, and again, I've had this one for a really long time, and it did used to have a little strawberry in it. I don't know. My kids, I blame everything on my kids, but I do think that one of my kids snipped it off when they were little. Um, this is a cool pin cushion. We used to make and sell these in my shop. This is solid wool scrap. So we initially, actually, I wonder if I have the thing around. So this design, we made Christmas decorations for Timberland one year, and we called them baubles. And they were a little bit smaller, and they were like sort of between this size and a golf ball in size. And we made literally thousands of them. We sold them to Timberland, and Timberland sold them in all of their retail stores. And then we made these giant, not that giant, this giant circular ones that were like for their window displays. And they were just super cool, 100% recycled. They really helped me kind of put my name out there. This was back in, I think it was in the 90s. At any rate, they were ahead of their time with using recycled stuff and promoting their business that way. So those are the pin cushions that I kind of keep in my collection. And then I have a couple that I sell in my shop, and I just want to show you. There's two that I have here, and this is one of them. And you can see this is a little ball jar. This is an 8-ounce ball jar, and it's actually a Kerr jar, Kerr. Ball, mason, Kerr, they're all kind of the same. And they make these jars with lids that you use for canning. And the reason why this is my favorite style pin cushion is because I tend to drag my work around with me a lot. So like when I leave here at the end of the day, if I'm working on a giant batch of masks right now, and they require a lot of pinning. So I bring them home with me in the evenings, and when I'm hanging out with my family after dinner, I'll sit and just pin a few pin cushions. And the thing that's really cool about these is that this piece, the center piece, you can take out and flip over. So like when you have it, like this one is belly up, so to speak. That doesn't sound good. But this one has the pokey thing up. And it also has all these very long needles in it, so I don't want to flip it over. But this one's just got a few short things in it. And if you flip it over this way and put it in your jar this way, and tighten it down, it's great just to toss in your bag. Whereas if you toss a pin cushion of, this type of thing in your bag, you wind up, running the risk of throwing your hand in your bag, forgetting your pin cushion is in there and getting poked pretty fiercely. And it's also, it pokes into all the other stuff, your needles and thread, and gets caught around everything else in your bag. So they're not great for throwing in your bag. But this is great for throwing in your bag. So these are my favorite types of pin cushions, and I sell these in my shop. They're $24, and they come with an assorted, color palette here. This one's got this little beaded accoutrement from a really cool, I think it was from India or Pakistan, a traditional kind of sari, um, like overdress. I don't know what they're technically called, but super cool. I always try to find some really fun and cool embellishments to include in, or just nice fabric. They don't all have embellishments, but um, being that I've had this in my life since whenever that was, 1971, I feel like it's important to find tools that are going to speak to you and kind of give you the pleasure and also share memories. Like if you have kids in your life, little ones um, that might have the same kind of childhood memory that my grandmother gave me when they're our age, and talking about a cool pincushion that you might have had. So these are available in my shop. I just want to take a moment. Hi, Chicken Nuggets. And I know your name is not actually Chicken Nuggets, but I can't remember. Somebody told me I'm Chicken Nuggets on Facebook, and I'm like, cool. And it's nice to see you here. And I know that you're awesome, but I can't remember what your real name is. Yeah, and sage or laurel, sage laurel. I never knew that about the strawberry tethered to my tomato pincushion. It has sand in it for use in cleaning the needles that get tarnished. Very clever indeed. Yeah, that's like an old school little trick. And honestly, I think that people back in the day, I think needles were made differently, so they got tarnished more readily. And people kept their needles for a really long time. Like they weren't as available to to purchase as they are today. So I feel like that little strawberry tethered to this kind of a pin cushion that's what we're talking about. Um, they were more useful, when our grandmas were stitching. Not to say they're not useful today, but I just don't find as much tarnish on my sewing implements as I might have back in the day. And I also use them a lot, so maybe if you're the kind of person who might just pick up your stitching every once in a while, that might happen more readily. Your stuff might get tarnished. Okay, so I don't want to lose my train of thought. There's a couple of things that I wanted to share with you, and that is about the actual, there's a couple things, so I'll try to remember them all. So I wanted to talk to you about pins and about the different kinds of pins. So we can kind of discuss that a little bit. Let me just find a sample here. There's probably as many different kind of pins as there are different kinds of needles. And one of the things that I really enjoy using are these. This is, it's really, I'm going to try to hold it in front of the white background and see if you guys can get a really good view of it. There we go. This is called a Quilters Pen, and they're 1.75 inches long. So when I go to pin through a couple of layers of like heavy wool fabric, like suppose I want to pin this piece of sweater, I can go in and out of that fabric, even with its bulk and its kind of sponginess, and I still have room. Like the pin is not too short to get through, all the way down through and then back up without, whereas if you used a normal kind of dressmaker's pin, which is about 1.25 inches in length, you sometimes lose the, it doesn't really, you can't really even see it here, but it kind of gets lost in there. And the other thing about dressmaker pins that don't work very well for my particular process is that they have just a regular little metal head like your average straight pin, and those tend to kind of get lost in the fabrics that I use. I use a lot of sweater knits, and they're not as easy to see. Whereas when you have a quilter's pen that's more of like a ball head, it's easier to find them. It's easier for them to just, the visual is easier to find. Okay, so pins are something that they hold it all together, don't they? It's kind of funny how this simple little tool is so useful. I'm just trying to find a couple things I want to show you. So one of the things that I've noticed, and I've actually, I watch a lot of like YouTube videos and just kind of see what other people are doing out there in the wild world of hand sewing and crafting and textile recycling. And I have a trick about pins, and I guess I always think this stuff is like, oh, everybody knows that stuff. But if you're new to sewing, or even if you're not new to sewing, I actually watched a video on YouTube the other day of somebody doing this. It just kind of blew my mind because they were teaching, and it was not the right way to go. So if you wanted to stitch straight across the top of the square this way, right across here, and you wanted to do like, I don't know, let's just say a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you'd put your squares edge to edge, right sides together, usually for traditional stitching, and then you would pin it, and you would pin it this way so that your pins are perpendicular to the edge that you're going to stitch. Okay, you don't want them to be horizontal. Okay, so let me just pin this 3 things right here. Okay, so you have your pins that way. Okay, the reason why you want them to be perpendicular, so like, you know, this, if you can imagine this pin being a line and then, you know, creating kind of a right angle with the top, is so that when you're stitching with your sewing machine, you can, the sewing machine's going to hop right over those pins. If you have a pin going this way, which is what I saw the other day on YouTube, your sewing machine is going to come to that pin and it's going to either go try to stitch through the head, it's going to break a needle, you're going to have to remove the pin as you're stitching, where that just creates kind of an additional step to the process. So you want to always stitch with your, if you're sewing, especially on a sewing machine, you're going to stitch with your pins perpendicular to the edge that you want to stitch. While I'm talking about it, this is not just a sewing machine trick. When you're sewing, you want to handle your material. You know, I'm talking about hand sewing now. So when I'm hand sewing, I want to be able to gather that material into my hand. And if I know all my pointy ends are out on one edge, I know that I can kind of gather that fabric up in my hand and start my seam sewing without having to worry, where are those pins and am I going to stab myself with them? So a lot about enjoying this process has to do with holding your fabric in a comfortable way and holding your tools in a comfortable way. So that is my 2 cents or 20 minutes, whichever you prefer, all about pins. Does anybody have any questions this morning? There's a couple ways that you guys could really help me out. I'm really looking forward to building up my community here on Facebook and on my website. So, and also on YouTube, by the way. YouTube is kind of a new platform for me. I use Instagram, I use Pinterest, and I use Facebook right now. I just kind of, I've been using YouTube like back burner-ish for a few years, but recently it's come to my attention that it's a really great platform to share videos. So if you head over to my YouTube page and pop your name, you can subscribe. Once I have 1,000 subscribers, I can live stream on my YouTube platform like I do here on Facebook. I think I'm right around like 500, just about 500. So any, you know, one subscriber at a time. Each one of you guys is an awesome human out there in the world. I so appreciate all that you share with me. So that's one way that you can help me. Another way you can help me is if you tag a friend in the comments of this post and then pop me a message, either a DM or email if you have my email. With your mailing address, I will send you a handmade screen print in the mail as a thank you for sharing my feed. And of course, if you're not interested in sharing your address, no, not to worry, but I still would really appreciate any sharing that you could do. So, like, I will be here live every morning at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time until August 11th when we wind down the 30-day series. There'll be more, but I'm always doing more fun